This is the voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Duell. Today, we are talking about productivity, relationships, and conflict. This is Program 5, Conflict Kills Productivity and Relationships. George Bernard Shaw said something that is very appropriate to start our dialogue today. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And in this program, we're going to explore the question, what do you do when no one else agrees with you? We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Duell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
There are times when we find ourselves watching, or we're smack dab in the middle of a disagreement. What happens when everyone is against us? That's what we're going to talk about today. It's easy to stand on the outside and be supportive, provide guidance, and even facilitate. But when the tables are turned, we might be the one that is right and everyone else is wrong. Or we might be the one that is right and everyone else is right too. It takes self-awareness to recognize that there's more than one path to solve a problem, to get to the commonly shared end goal. It takes a willingness to be curious and figure out if there's a way to support everyone's perspective, Winfinity, and build consensus on a combined idea that, while might not make everyone 100% happy, it is clearly what's necessary for this situation at this time and in this place. What do you do when nobody agrees with you? I'm trying to think what I do. What do? Sometimes I shut down. I cross my arms and I huff and I puff and I am just closed to whatever comes next. Because I know what I want. I've decided it already. Why can't everybody else get on board? Sometimes I'm like, oh, of course, there's more than just me out there, so I'm just going to go with what everybody else wants, even though it's against what I want, and I might not even believe in it. I'm agreeable. Other times, I might be able to hold off on an initial reaction and facilitate a kind of a dialogue and maybe ask a question or two. What? How? Where? Notice I avoided why. Why questions can create a defensiveness. Why did you do that? Why do you think that way? Why didn't it work? Well, our initial response is to come up with a reason. Even if we don't have it in that moment, we want to justify. So conflict, when we're asked why, there's this thing that happens inside of me, and maybe you too, where I'm like, oh, I got to have an answer. And so I have an answer, and I search really fast, really fast, really fast. Those wheels are all turning, all the hamsters are on, and I say something. And it could be the right something, and it could be the wrong something, and it could be a tactful something, or it could be a hurtful something. And reflecting on that, it made me wonder, is it okay that nobody agrees with me? And I would say, yeah. When nobody agrees with me, what does that feel like? When nobody agrees with me, even though I have a really good plan, even though nobody else has put up obstacles to actually getting to the end goal, they just don't like it for some reason. What if I still went ahead with it? It might feel weird. I know for me, I'm cringing on the inside going, what if I did something nobody else liked? The whole purpose of being on a team is to be on a team, and what that means, and what the definition of teamwork is, and contribution and collaboration, and how they all fit together for us to get to the end goal. Because, inherently, there's this need to be liked even a little bit. There's this need to be agreed with. Sometimes it's ego, and I think sometimes it's even more than that. we need to really check in with ourselves, because when we're so afraid of disagreement and we're so afraid, or we just feel like we don't have time for conversation, or what else would be another good example of that? Or we just know nobody else is as smart as us on this topic for this situation. We kind of shut down. And when we need help, do we seek out people that have different thoughts than we do, that might be contrarian to our point of view? Sometimes. I think more often than not, there's a need for speed, there's a need for comfort, there's a need for proof that my way is the way. And so I seek out people that will go along with me, that agree with my concepts and my approach, and we get the job done. And most of the time it turns out okay. It's the times that it doesn't turn out okay that looking back and reflecting, I can actually say, I needed some conflict here. Who knew? There's a movie, I will dig it up and I will put it in the program notes, about a psychologist around World War II and after World War II, that was trying to figure out why people would go along with something that they knowingly did not like. How did they abdicate their responsibility? Why did they give it up? Why did they give up their personal responsibility and be agreeable? So where it fits in here to this conversation is that we want to be liked so much, and we believe that the people telling us what to do have a reason for it, that we fall in line, that we think that it's okay, or that we're willing to do it's okay. And there's a show called Halt and Catch Fire. I'll also link to that in the program notes. That's an AMC show that's on right now. Season 3 is currently going. My husband Ryan and I are watching it. And it's amazing how much agreeableness occurs, and how much shutting down of different opinions occur, and how much this closed-offedness happens. And what ends up happening in one situation where this company is run by this amazingly brilliant woman, nobody else is as bright as she is. Nobody else can match her ideas and run with them. It takes too much time for her to coach and bring people along. So she does everything. And the rest of the team is getting paid and they're doing stuff here and there, but they are not stepping up because they're not being asked to. She doesn't want the conflict of bringing people along and developing those people. And they don't want the conflict of saying, hey, we're kind of bored. So they make up and do their own thing. And everything gets done, yet there's a great big bottleneck with the owner of the company. And another situation is a young man who goes to work, this is a different company in the same show, goes to work for a company, and he's really passionate about this concept, and he's really idealistic about it. And he finds himself in his first senior management meeting with the owner of the company and a whole bunch of other people. And it turns out that everybody had one thought, and they were going down this path. And the thing is, it went against his idealism, his concept of this product, of this idea that he really wanted to be a part of in this company. Yet he sat there and he went along with it. So after the meeting was over, the day went by, this young kid decided he needed to speak up and he needed to right this wrong. And he went back to the owner of the business and he said, hey, I did not speak up in the meeting and I'm against this. And the owner says, well, why didn't you? And he goes, I've only been here a week. I didn't want to create conflict. So here, this conflict got pressed inside. And there are two elements of conflict that we really can look at. And one of the ways that we can do that is with an article and some really amazing research that was talked about by the Harvard Business Review. In the fall 2016 edition, which you can find all these articles online, and I will link to everything that I reference here in the program notes as well, there was an article called Competent Jerks and Lovable Fools. And here's the summary. New research shows that when people need help getting a job done, they'll choose a congenial colleague over a more capable one. That has big implications for every organization, and not all of them are negative. And that's true. So let's talk about the negative ones first, right? We're thinking about conflict, and when we know what we want to do and we've got to get something done, and all of a sudden we realize we need help, are we going to go to somebody that we know is going to disagree with us? If we have a choice, it's more comfortable not to. It's easier not to. It might not always be the right thing to do. So we tend to naturally gravitate toward what is comfortable and easy and will get the job done, and finding somebody that's likable. So you've got these people that are very likable, and people seek them out. They are willing to do anything, even though they might not have the knowledge that is necessary for a project. They'll do the best they can with what they have. And over on the sideline, sometimes snickering, sometimes oblivious because they're all in their own worlds, are these people that hoard information. They are so capable. They are so confident. Their ego gets in the way of their ability to communicate, which also affects relationships. And when you've got these people that hold all of this information themselves, and they say, I know it better than anybody else, well, it makes them a little unapproachable. And if I'm worried or pressed for time, am I going to go to somebody that is possibly going to poke holes in my theory? Do I even want that right now? Is that my intention for going to them? No, my intention for going to them would be to use their strengths and their knowledge to get this job done, not necessarily to poke holes in things and make me second guess myself. Well, hey self, sometimes that needs to happen even if it's the wrong time, because really the wrong time is the exact right time to avoid a bigger mistake down the road. But we avoid it. We avoid it by nature. One of the things that I really like about this article, especially when it's talking about people, is that it highlights that there isn't a weakest link on a team. It's every link has a strong point and a weak point, and how all of those fit together at any point in time is what makes the team strong or not. And that's the part that I really liked about this article, because it's cool to have conflict and it's cool to have strengths. And, you know, a typical way to evaluate employees still is to rank them on different things. So you've got the A group, the B group, the C group, or the top quartile and the second quartile and the third and the fourth quartiles of people. And, you know, like Jack Welch, he was like, well, every so often, all the people in that fourth quartile, they're not really helping us here, and we're not really helping them by keeping them. Out they go. That's a little bit, you know, there are pros and cons to that too. In terms of conflict, you've got people who would rather be yes men, get the job done, and have productivity according to whatever productivity means in the organization, so they don't get cut from the team completely. We also would have people who, you know, I'm going to go back to the concept of these people who have information and they don't want to share it, and conflict is they can create resentment in a team. They're creating hard feelings, and hard feelings that aren't talked about fester and fester and fester, and they turn into things like anger and resentment. And so then other things can happen because of that. And whatever process for communication, however communication is defined, whatever the rules of engagement for conflict are, and usually we can even call brainstorming conflict, that's a positive way to look at gathering of a bunch of different ideas and talking through them, is this concept of, wow, they really didn't like my idea. Wow, I really feel stupid because I missed a big piece that, had we gone forward without that knowledge, would have made us flop sooner and not see the results we wanted as quickly. Okay, that's hard to own. And that's a level of self-awareness that us as leaders must have, especially when we're talking about developing people, helping people work together in their strengths, mitigating the weaknesses of different team members and different projects and how all of that works, and developing the type of people and the relationships in our team to get the things done and to create this amazing machine of ideas that add to the business that we get to benefit from as a whole. Albert Einstein said, "I speak to everyone in the same way, whether he is the garbage man or the president of the university." How interesting is that? That's a super interesting comment, specifically because it talks about respect. So when we're talking about conflict, usually conflict, and when nobody agrees with me, the first thing I think is to lash out. Well, when my initial reaction is to lash out, maybe I don't even knowingly do it. Maybe it's just an ingrained reaction. Is that really respectful of the other person who might just be being candid with me, who might just want the best and is speaking up on the behalf of my best, and I turn around and I lash them with my words? Whew! That's some serious conflict there. That's the kind of conflict that will kill productivity in relationships and break down. Those are the weaknesses that leaders are looking to reduce across all people. It's that personal ego that gets in the way. So as a leader, I have to remember when somebody disagrees with me and I start to react, can I catch myself and keep my mouth closed? Maybe I need to open it, but maybe it's those first moments that really matter that just need to pass, as much as a breath, to ask a question. Tell me more about that. I'm interested in knowing what made you think about that. How is that relevant right now? Let that person help us get in our whole brain and recognize that we might be missing something really big, and it's worth being curious about to be able to confirm our path, or better, strengthen the path that we were going to go down. At one point in our conversation so far, I was talking about agreeableness, and there are times I know personally that I have agreed with people that I disagree with because I really needed to get out of the situation. Or I understood that it was a lost cause and just voicing the opinion was going to be a squashing moment. It was just going to bring me down. And I didn't want that, so I just agreed and I tried to put it out of my mind. The thing is part of productivity, part of relationship building, and part of managing conflict is to recognize sometimes what needs to be said needs to be said. And when it doesn't, the only person that suffers is the person who kept their mouth closed. So in the effort to avoid conflict, there's suffering that occurs. There's pain. There's oh, they never listened to me anyway. Here come the excuses. Oh, I just can't handle that right now. I don't want the put downs. I just can't. And there's another article in this same edition of the Harvard Business Review called "Is Silence Killing Your Company?" I definitely recommend the read. Because when you end up with yes men, if everybody around you is always saying yes to you, nobody's ever pushing back, nobody's ever challenging, and let's use some nicer words here, nobody's ever being curious, genuinely curious about what you're saying and asking more questions to better understand, that's a good sign that there's disagreement and nobody's talking about it and everybody disagrees with you, yet there's something that's holding them back from speaking up. There's some big costs of this. A first one is emotional burnout. Nobody believes me anyway, and nobody cares what I say, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. And over time, that turns into I am underappreciated. And over time, that turns into nobody sees my value here. And then that's the cycle that people will leave. It's too bad. If people need to leave, they need to leave not because they're undervalued, but for other reasons. And letting people feel like they're undervalued is a great big problem. There's also a when and a how to say what needs to be said. And so in addition to building relationships, trainings on how do we engage differently? What can I do to speak up for myself, even though I know everybody's going to disagree with me? What can I do to speak up in a way that is seen as coming from a place of help? I really want to help this other person or this team without being shut down by that person or the team. Other things that come up when we're talking about conflict then is courage. There's an element of courage that we have to have within ourselves that if nobody agrees with us, or even if we're afraid nobody's going to agree with us, we find that voice and we say what needs to be said. While it might be the hardest thing we do, and it's a hard skill because sometimes we think we're compromising. The problem is if we're not talking about it, nobody's giving anything up, it's only us. And that we need to avoid. And maybe different ways of engagement, going back to the values of the company. How are the values embodied each day? And can dialogue and rules of engagement around dialogue bring out conflict, meaning good tension that's fuel to move forward and work through, versus the conflict that is destructive and behind the scenes and usually covered up by people that don't say anything at all. We got to get stuff out from underneath the cracks. Look at, shine the lights in the corners, find the elephants in the room. Take a look around and recognize that the elephants in the room aren't necessarily bad things, that once they're talked about and acknowledged, they get to become part of the party. It becomes something to work with and from. One of a person that I know, John O'Brien, told me this word that I absolutely positively love called Winfinity. And Winfinity is where everybody takes something away that benefits them. It's not a win-win, and it's not a win-win-win. It is, no matter which way you look at it, no matter what way it's presented, there is a positive outcome. And one of the things that I like about Winfinity is that when we think about going into a conversation and we know nobody agrees with us, or we think nobody's going to agree with us, or we find ourselves in a situation where we thought we were in agreement with somebody and to our surprise we are not, Winfinity is a great single word to remember. So what can I do to really serve the need of this other person? Because usually conflict comes from a lack of understanding. Winfinity means being a little curious and willing to explore, because maybe an idea that is not used or a concept that is not ideal at this time and place actually is the gateway, the opening to find the one that is. So quit being agreeable and speak up. Courage. Speak with respect and care, regardless of who the person is, what they know, what they don't know. Respect is what that is. And curiousness. Conflict can be reactive or it can be proactive. And proactive conflict moves things forward, shifts things up, challenges things that need to be challenged without ego, without reactiveness, without defensiveness. So a couple of tips, I guess, to leave you with would be to turn an initial reaction into a quick moment of silence, to be able to get some respect and some courage and be able to speak, preferably tactfully, and ask a question. To speak up when it's the hardest to do so. And to recognize that questions allow more listening to occur, which means we can ask better questions, which means we can understand more deeply, which means that we don't have to be agreed with. We can understand and foster an open dialogue that is for the greater good, is for the mission of our company, is for the benefit of the relationships of the people that come to work together every day. The program notes for Conflict Kills Productivity and Relationships will be at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com, Program 5, Conflict Kills Productivity and Relationships. We want your contributions. And since I'm on this one alone, I want to know what you think. I want to know your experiences, and I want to know what you would add to this conversation. Visit the program notes page on thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and leave a comment, share a story. And until next time, conflict kills productivity and relationships. So check yourself to avoid that.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Duell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.